Hey, everybody, it's the Comic Book Gurus. I'm Steve Morris from the Preston and Steve Show. We have our gurus here. I'm going to tell you in a minute, though, but I got to let you know what we're talking about. James Gunn, he has announced a whole list of new DC projects over appears to be a decade-long time span. I don't think I've ever seen anything this ambitious in the comic book realm. Obviously, Marvel had their massive run at the beginning, but there's a lot of stuff going on here, and who better to lead us through it all than the gurus? We have Craig Lagans, we have Rockstar Rob, and we have Steph. Hey, everybody, how you doing?
Doing
Hey,
good,
Steve.
Steve.
Good to see you. And let's call up what we have going on here. James Gunn, DC slate announcement for upcoming movies and TV. A massive undertaking, and he started with this video, and I think they got this video out. There's been a lot of volatility going on. You see James Gunn trending on Twitter every other day, and there's sort of a back and forth war. I'm a massive fan of the Snyderverse. I loved what went down with that, but I have a lot of faith in James Gunn. So we'll see what he does, and what he rolled out seems very encouraging. So Craig, why don't you start us through on this?
Well, what James Gunn did, he in 5 minutes and 53 seconds, he explained everything that was wrong with the DC universe, and then explained everything that was going to go right with the DC universe. He used the word disconnected, something that Rob and I have talked about for a long time with the DC movies, and he made a clear path that after the 4 movies that are coming out this year in the DC studios, namely Shazam, The Flash, The Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2, after those movies are done, DC is going in one straight line, using the same actors and the same continuity in movies, TV, and in animation. Namely, the Flash movie that's coming out, the much maligned Flash movie, will be the starting point of the new DC universe. And he's mapped out a whole list of movies and projects. Some of them are very little known except to DC fans. And he's made it a point to not only focus on the main characters in the DC universe, Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, but the lesser known DC characters that he loves uh, in the comic book form that he wants to bring to life. And the first one that he was so excited to talk about was called Creature Commandos. It's
Creature
going to be,
Commando. Yeah,
yeah,
I've never heard of this.
me neither, Steve. And
Now,
between Rob and I,
I, I I wanted to tell you something. I was talking to Craig about this. There's a
uh,
book that DC put out called New Frontiers, and it takes place really early on in the DC universe, like the 50s. It goes through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, decade by decade. And in the very beginning, Creature Commandos is like the first major thing in New Frontiers.
Well,
So
let me
it
let me
made
let me
me
read it quickly here for you. Creature Commandos will be an animated series written by James Gunn, so he's writing the whole thing. The Suicide Squad's Weasel is a core member. That was a very unique character in the Suicide Squad movies. Using Creature Commandos as a stepping off point, Gunn expands the DCU's plan to move characters into and out of animation and live action. That's pretty wild.
so
yeah,
I
and
but I think it's going I think they're using this New Frontiers, this huge book. It's back here on my shelf. Um as as a not a Bible is for where they're going to go, but a placeholder since it goes decade by decade, and they you just see how the DC universe is intertwined and all connected, which is what Gunn is saying he's going to do.
Well, you have
yeah,
characters like Rick Flag Sr., Nina Mazursky, Dr. Phosphorus, Eric Frankenstein, G.I. Robot, the Weasel, as you said before. The Bride of Frankenstein is a
yeah,
character. So this is clearly, James Gunn is the one who really went out on a limb for Marvel and brought in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's the one that introduced the talking raccoon, was ported that over from Rocket to somebody. A lot of people said, "How the hell are they going to integrate that?" And he did. So again, he's completely suited for this kind of stuff. It's a weird thing to have this as the starting point, but why not? Let's move on to Waller. Craig or Rob, you take it.
Waller
Go
is
ahead.
the it's a it's a spinoff of Peacemaker, which was a huge series on HBO Max. Viola Davis is reprising her role as Amanda Waller, and we're going to see more of her and her. You know, she's a morally ambiguous character that Viola Davis obviously loves playing. What's got me excited about this, though, Steve, it's being written by Crystal Bernard, who wrote Watchmen for HBO.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's very
So,
cool. The question I have for you, Craig, is so in Peacemaker, we
mhm,
learned about her daughter who
yeah.
was in that, and I thought she was a fantastic character. Any idea as to whether or not she'll be in this Waller series?
She more or less has to, Steve. Obviously, nothing's been officially cast hasn't been released, but I would be very surprised if she wasn't because she was such a central character in Peacemaker and she connected Amanda Waller to Peacemaker. So having her in the series can do nothing but help. I mean, obviously Viola Davis can carry an entire series on her own, but yeah, having her there and even having some members of the Suicide Squad of Task Force X, of Diebeard, and some of the
Yeah,
guys, the characters that we met from
such a great
Peacemaker.
series. Yeah,
Yeah.
Peacemaker. You watched it as well, Steph. Yes.
Not yet.
Oh, you
No.
haven't seen Peacemaker. Oh,
I know.
if you love the boy,
I
the
do, yeah.
boys, it's on that level, and in many
Is
ways, it's
it?
got its own unique footprint, but it is so severely wrong. But Waller is such a at times a sociopath, clearly, and also, but she's getting the job done. I don't know. I'm conflicted about the character because I think she's a badass. She's
Mhm.
ruthless, but she's clearly I guess you walk away from the character of Waller saying, well, at least she's on our side, sort of, you know?
That I
But
guess we're gonna find out
do we
what kind of
actually
mother.
know if this if her character is going to be moving forward from what we've seen, or it's going to go back?
I haven't heard anything.
Because
Craig, have you
with the
heard?
DC,
This
you have
this is a yeah, this is a Peacemaker spinoff, so it's going from the end of
All
Peacemaker
right.
to yeah.
okay.
So we may get to see though what kind of mother she is.
Yeah,
Well,
I bet she's a sweetheart. Uh, she was actually bizarrely maternal with her daughter in Peacemaker, though. So let's move on to Superman Legacy. Now, obviously, this is what I think Zack Snyder did phenomenally well. And of course, I'll say it till the day I die. I'm a massive fanboy for what he did and the legacy he left behind. But
Mhm.
with that comes James Gunn's Superman legacy. What are we going to see here, guys?
Not Henry Cavill.
Yes,
Nope.
we know that.
But this will be the complete reboot of Superman, and what James Gunn is doing with his projects that he's announcing, he's taking these projects from very well received, critically acclaimed comic book series. Superman Legacy, I think, came out in 2012, and it was a different take on Superman. It's not an origin story, Steve. I know, like you said, we've seen the origin story a million times. So it's just picking up uh, with Superman trying to balance his Kryptonian life with his Earth life. Obviously,
Right.
Yeah,
nothing's been.
I read Superman Legacy, and there was a whole
Mhm.
thing that he actually went into the military,
Right.
and
Was he ROTC?
it was very interesting how he had to kind of dumb down what he does because you know they weren't supposed to know. But
Why
his
didn't you give it to
commanding
that stupid
officer,
guy who could pick up tanks?
yeah,
Uh, no, so again, this is so I consider myself, Rob, like fairly squarely rooted in a lot of the foundational DC stuff, but so I was unaware of this, and so
Mhm.
what age do you think, comparatively, so not Kryptonian age, are we
18.
finding 18?
Yeah, like out of high school, he joins the military. Yeah. So you're gonna get mom, pa, Kent, and them, in
Getting it on.
instilling things into him. Yeah, but yeah. So he joins the military, and it was very interesting. It was
Well,
just
let me
like
ask you, Steph. So we've been through what I loved. I loved. Listen, Henry Cavill is my Superman. I love him to death.
Mhm.
I would have loved to have seen more films with him. though. Listen, the more the merrier. Let's see what they can do. That's the beauty of this stuff, is that they can keep reinterpreting it. I was kind of happy to be living with a more seasoned Superman. Where do you stand on going back to a Smallville, younger kind of Superman for the James Gunn arc?
I think it would be a nice change. I mean, I'm also glad this is not an origin story because, again, like we've all seen it, we all kind of know by now. So I think it would be a nice change to have a younger version on the big screen and go from there. I think that would be good.
So, what do you guys? We've heard a few names floated around. Do you think that there's anyone who has a lock on it at this point
No.
for Superman?
No.
Not at all.
But the last thing I'll say about Superman Legacy, James Gunn is writing the screenplay for this, possibly directing. So he may or may not borrow from take it from the comic book standpoint. So we may see him older, and we may not. We may see him in the army. We may not. But because this is just a one movie deal, and Superman Legacy was a series that he. Again, it's being written by James Gunn, possibly directed. So he's got his hands all over this. So who knows where it will pick up in the Superman, in the life of Superman. And
do you remember who wrote the book?
Superman Legacy? No, I'm looking at my notes right here. No, I know who wrote Brave and the Bold, but we haven't got there yet. But it very well known, and he loves these authors that he's taking these projects from. He's adapting these highly critical comic book stories into movies, and Superman Legacy was a really well respected book when it came out because it showed us a different side of Superman that we may not, even hardcore Superman fans may not have known. But we have to wait until July 11th, 2025. So casting will come for another year or so.
Or go to a comic book store and get a trade paperback.
Whoever they pick is going to be somebody they're going to want to be Superman for at least 10 years and then beyond. So that's why obviously skewing younger makes more sense. Let's move on to the next one, which is Lanterns. So are we finally going to get a real treatment of the Green Lantern mythos and all of the lanterns?
Space cops. That's what it's going to be. Space cops.
They kind of likened it to what, like True Detectives, kind of.
It's what the Green Lantern Corps was always about. It was space cops, and they all had, we always just saw Green Lantern on Earth, like he was just a superhero on Earth. No, he was assigned our planet. So we never got to see that. And now
I heard that there is that the focus would be on Earth. Did I mishear that, Craig? That this will also focus on Earth?
You're right, Steve. James Gunn used the word terrestrial, so they're going to be focused on Earth because they, like Rob said, they've been assigned to Earth in nerddom. Sector 2814 is Earth, but we'll see Hal Jordan and John Stewart, the primaries, but we're also going to see some other lanterns may drop by. So maybe we'll see a Guy Gardner or a Kilowog, or maybe even a Gasp Sinestro. But this is like a True Detective story, but that takes place on Earth. But these guys also patrol space. So again, another HBO Max series that James Gunn may be writing. Again, but definitely executive producing. So that looking forward to.
All right, let me adjust this here. I'm ruining everything here with my special cool graphics and everything. All right, so Lanterns, we move on to the Authority live action film. What do we have with this?
Steve, if The Boys wasn't already a thing, it would be The Authority. I'm afraid I love the movie. I love the comic book. I love the story, but the thing is, The Boys got there first. So even if it's really good, which again with James Gunn and with the writing from the original story, it's going to be great. But I'm afraid it's going to get it's not good. I've already seen it.
Too many comparisons.
Are we going to get a sense of been there, done that, or in other words, because we've been now with Peacemaker and with The Boys and with was it Invincible? What's the animated series on Netflix?
Yeah, Invincible. Yeah,
Right. So the the quasi um, uh, champion superheroes who actually have a dark side. So is that what this is?
that's exactly what it is.
All right.
And
And
it
this
was,
is coming out as a full film, a live action film.
yeah. So that might be the only thing that's different from the boys. And this wasn't really this was a DC offshoot. This wasn't in the DC realm. This was from uh, it was a run of comic books called Wildstorm that the Authority was from. It's kind of like a kind of like what Vertigo Comics was for DC. So it was under the DC umbrella, but not really in the DC
Yeah,
universe.
DC bought Wildstorm.
Yeah.
Let me read what it says about this. A DC Comics deep cut, as you guys are verifying. The
Mhm.
Authority features characters from the Wildstorm team, just mentioned that, Midnighter and Apollo. These morally ambiguous heroes think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. Gunn insists the show is a different look at superheroes than what fans have come to expect. But at this point, as we said early in this, we kind of do expect it, thanks to the boys and thanks to Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of like overt sexual deviancy in the
All right.
Authority.
And so,
It,
would you say more so than season 2 opener of The Boys?
Uh, right on par with it. Right on
Okay.
par.
Yeah, except as rather than being inside a human penis, we'll deal more with the ass in this one.
yes, we'll go the other way.
Right. Like I
You know,
think
I mean,
Midnighter is gay.
you
I
saw
think.
that it was for those who haven't seen it, watch the opening, the first 10 minutes of the beginning of season 2.
God.
It will blow your mind. All right, on to Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
Take this one, Craig.
Paradise Lost is a live action TV series, possibly on HBO Max. James Gunn seems to have the lock on the HBO Max series. They'll focus on Themyscira, the birthplace of Wonder Woman. So we
Ah,
get to see the Amazons up close and personal, and in a Game of Thrones type series that takes place before the Wonder Woman films, because the island of Themyscira. That we will find out if it's like the Themyscira series in or the Paradise Island series rather in the DC universe wasn't always all women. It's they had some men there and they didn't fare too well. So if they touch on that part of Paradise Island,
really?
yeah,
Were they exterminated? Don't give too much away.
It wasn't always women. I'm saying there
All
were
right.
men in Paradise Island too. But when we meet Wonder Woman, not so much. So maybe Paradise Island will take a look at that if
Well,
they
this
go back.
illustration indicates there seems to be I don't know if this is accurate. You sent it over, Craig. So there
Mhm.
seems to be flying machines and things of that nature, and
Yeah,
very technologically advanced. So is this the tone that you will expect from the series?
this is the tone I'm hoping to see in this series. DC what DC does very well is landscapes and looks of things. Paradise Island, Kandar and Black Adam, Gotham City. They do cityscapes amazing. So I'd love to see more of that and see the clip the picture I showed you, more of a futuristic vibe to it. Because any place that's got flying cars or flying motorcycles, I want to see more of.
Well, to your point, in this copy here that is included, by the way, it's a Sideshow Collectibles site. They really do some good sort of thumbnail
Mhm.
overviews of these things that are coming up, and I keep them in business by buying every freaking statue they release. But the here, as it said, Gunn also teased the appearance of other Themyscira residents besides the Amazons, so we might get you know, the men you were talking about, and we'll see how that plays out. So interesting. I'd love to find out more about that world and flesh that out. The Brave and the Bold, a live
I
action film. Go
I
ahead, Rob.
read this. I read this with this Grant Morrison run with Damian, his son, and Damian Wayne, who is the bastard of all bastards. He was raised by assassins, and he does not want to play nice. I
Is he
loved it.
is
It
he
was
is he
amazing.
technically a bastard or just in spirit a bastard?
Probably both because they weren't
Okay,
married,
bastard
but
squared.
he, probably the closest alliance he has is not to his dad, but to Alfred. You
Okay,
know,
so let me read what it says here. The Brave and the Bold will become the introduction of the DC's new Batman using Grant Morrison's comic, as you just said. The film will also feature Damian Wayne, the biological son of Talia al Ghul. We know where
Yeah.
that's from. And Bruce Wayne. Damian is also one of Batman's Robins. He is a conflicted young superhero because of his complicated family history. Fittingly, Gunn describes this film as the beginning of the caring, chaotic household that is the Bat family. I am a little bit more familiar with this. Again, the funny thing about all of this stuff, whether you be it's Batman or Superman or the Green Lantern, you can pick one plot line and live in that forever. And I think that's I've been such a fan of the Frank Miller Batman
Mhm.
and in that realm and the more aggressive dark versions. And I wasn't that familiar with this. So I am looking forward to this. Craig, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, this is the first time we're going to see a Robin, this Robin in the Batman related series. Uh, he is the daughter of Talia al Ghul. His grandfather is Ra's al Ghul, and he was raised to kill. That's all he knows. So then when he's left with his father, here you take him, and Batman is all about justice and bringing criminals to justice. And Damien's like, well, why don't we just kill them so we don't have to put them back in jail, and they escape and we capture them again. So there was the conflict between Batman and Damian Wayne, which was so well done in the Grant Morrison thing. Thank God this is on HBO Max because you're going to see a lot of blood if done correctly and a lot of cursing. And yeah, I echo what Rob said. Damian Wayne is he's the problem child on steroids. He's a bastard coated bastard with bastard filling.
but
Yeah, and bastard sauce.
they did something so interesting in the comic, and I hope at some point they do it, where Bruce Wayne kind of stepped out of the Batman, and Dick Grayson, who was Nightwing, became Batman, and he had a way better dynamic with Damian Wayne than Bruce Wayne because it's like he's his dad, and there was fathers and sons always have problems, but Dick Grayson was like a way better Batman with him.
Well, let me ask you a question because you talked about this earlier. I think you might have mentioned this, Craig, or at
Mhm.
least from the video, both you guys. So you're actually going to have a Joker and a Batman. You're going to have the Batman. You're going to have Rob Pattinson continue with the Batman 2 and the
Mhm.
Joker 2. And so that will be a different universe running concurrently with James Gunn's rebooted universe. And they will play nicely together, is what we understand, correct?
Yeah,
That is
DC used to release a lot of hardback trade paperbacks that were elsewhere, which in like would be comparable to like What If for Marvel. But things like if Batman was a vampire and if
I love that
Joker had
series. That
yeah.
Vampire Batman series is I love that. In
that,
fact, that's another thing I bought from Sideshow Collectibles. So, all
that,
right, well, cool. I'm definitely stoked for this, and we are actually going back to. Let me just flip over here. Look at these little get. Where do I get these wonderful toys? Okay, here we go. We're gonna go to the what do we got here? Booster Gold. And
yeah.
you had mentioned this. I think you'd mentioned this at one point. Was it you, Craig, who had mentioned this?
I did. Booster Gold is a little known character in DC. Huge cult following. Character came out in 1986, and
Is
I
he?
would say
You were mentioning kind of the Deadpool of
kind of
DC.
the Deadpool of DC universe in terms of the comic book, the way he's written and his humor. Because this is a guy. He comes from the future, and he's armed with all the knowledge of the future. So he comes back in the present day to be a superhero simply because he knows what's going to happen. So he can go to a bank ahead of time and prevent the robbery and become a hero without
Okay.
really realizing
But
that, there's
but
guns
he does
involved.
it so he can get praise and glory, and he wants to be in the newspaper. And the funny thing is, his best friend is Blue Beetle, who
Yeah.
we're going to get that movie beforehand. That I
Mhm.
don't know if it's going to tie into anything, but maybe we'll see Blue Beetle again once we get Booster Gold.
All right, so let me read this. Next up, with a live-action TV series about Booster Gold. Booster Gold is largely considered a loser hero. Oh, that's kind of a Deadpool vibe. From the future, who travels back in time. Booster's antics often involve his best friend, the Ted Cord version of Blue Beetle. Gunn describes the show as basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome, and it is as well an HBO Max series. Now, one thing that he's promised is that you won't feel left out. Everything will work together and synergize together.
Mhm.
So they're all moving in the same direction. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it and when we get the Blue Beetle movie later on this year, hopefully they can introduce Booster Gold. If not, I mean, to me, Glenn Howerton would be perfect for this role. But
Huh.
if James Gunn is intent on bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy into the DC universe, this Booster Gold is tailor made for Chris Pratt. Seriously.
All right. Yeah. Well, listen, that's something that we had talked about, and then apparently the word had been that he was looking to port a lot of those Guardians of the Galaxy actors that he loves so dearly over to the DC realm. Let's move on to Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow, a live-action film. Will this be the first time since the actual Supergirl movie years ago that Supergirl has appeared in a theatrical release?
Yes, this will be the first time since 1985. All credit to Helen Slater, who did a wonderful job. But this Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is a complete, again, borrowed from a highly acclaimed uh, miniseries in the DC universe. Supergirl World of Tomorrow is, you're going to see a much darker Supergirl where Clark Kent came from Krypton specifically to go to Earth. This Supergirl survived on a chunk of Krypton after it exploded. So she's been on this rock floating in space, having to make her own life. So she's seen a lot of death and a lot of people that she was close to die. So by the time she gets to Earth, she is a fully jaded uh, teenager or young adult who really sees Earth differently than her superpowered cousin does. So we're going to see a much more darker, much more adult Supergirl who, yeah,
Well,
I'm
it,
so
let me
for
ask.
this version of Supergirl. I mean, that CW garbage was just horrendous. I
Yeah,
could not get through that show, so I'm excited
Steph,
for this one.
Steph,
But
let
the
me ask
funny
you
thing,
because let me
go
ask
ahead.
you because there were moments when I thought the Supergirl series was hitting right notes and a lot when it wasn't. So what do you hope to see from this? What would satisfy you as are you a fan of Supergirl? I assume you are, right?
I mean, I don't know too much about her, but I'm not a fan just because she's a woman. It's
Right,
not
right,
like
right.
that or anything. But I was into all those CW shows, so I was like, oh, let me try this one because it's the
Yeah.
first one with a girl. We had Arrow and the Flash and all that kind of stuff. Um, I don't the acting was just so bad. I just couldn't get into the story because I was taken out so many times by the horrendous acting. So that was number one. And it
Right,
was
right.
just too I mean, I understand it was CW. I understand they had to cater to a younger audience and stuff. So I think, with this coming out in the movies, just she just has this totally different experience than the CW Supergirl. So I'm really excited to see where they're going to take this one as this more jaded person who's been through a whole lot.
I yeah, I agree with you. The times of the show really I thought did excel is when they did crossover episodes when
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
character was able to interact with the other characters in the DC realm. Let me read what this says
Mhm.
about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. It will be much more jaded character in contrast to her Kryptonian cousin, taking inspiration from Tom King and Delique Evans. I hope I'm saying that right. Book of the same name will see Supergirl struggle to find herself in a world that feels cruel and hopeless. Live action will be a sci-fi epic that takes the Supergirl mythos to all new heights. Okay, I'm down with that. Let's move
Mhm.
on to one of my favorites. I am a massive fan of Swamp Thing. And
Yeah.
I'm excited for this too. I mean, anything with monsters, I'm all about. So I was
were
excited to
you
see
were
this
you a
one
fan of
too.
the movies? Did you because there were the movies, and then there was a short-lived
Yeah.
series that I thought was
I
pretty
like
damn good.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So what's the story on this, guys?
Third time's a charm, Steve.
Yeah.
They got to get this one right. Of course, you and I remember the original Swamp Thing movie with the great Heather
Adrian
Lock,
Barbeau.
Adrian Barbeau. Sorry. Yeah, and the series that was on as recently as 3 years ago on Sci-Fi Network, I loved, and it was on CW briefly. This is getting the James Gunn treatment, and I just heard today, minutes before we went on the air, that rumored to be attached to directing Swamp Thing is James Mangold,
Oh,
who
did Logan.
direct, who did Logan and the
Yeah.
Wolverine,
I
and
think the Swamp Thing needs that sort of tortured approach. That's what I always loved
Mm.
about the character because, that's no one wants to end up like that. But always, I thought a noble character and a very cool one. And to your point, Steph, yeah, there is that creature element, those
Yeah.
mutations and those things that he ends up having to face off against. Let me read some of
Mhm.
what it says here. There'll be a departure from the DCU projects is much darker. A horror-influenced origin story makes a lot of sense. Originally part of the Vertigo label, not familiar with that. The film will be totally outside of the DCU, but will feed into the rest of the stories, according to Gunn. Is there any point in the DCU where Swamp Thing crossed over to interact with the more foundational superheroes,
More of the
yeah,
magic stuff, right? Right.
yeah, more
like
with the
Constantine?
yeah Constantine,
Constantine, yeah,
Mm.
more like that stuff.
All right.
Zatanna, and he was with Booster Gold a couple times.
What's that?
He was with Booster Gold a couple times, but he
Okay.
mostly, yeah, the Swamp Thing mostly hung out with the Justice League Dark members.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
Zatanna,
we
Constantine.
we're going longer, but we had to go longer for this because there's so much to
Yeah.
roll out. I'll just ask a couple of quick questions concerning that. Do
Mhm.
we think we're going to have a steady rollout of things that will, as far as the theatrical, that will end with post credit scenes that will lead us through the way the building of the Marvel universe started under John Favreau? Will we get that kind of event epic? What's coming up next? Or will that be diluted by the HBO Max stuff coming out as well? How do you think it will roll out? And will they give it the full throated, epic, here we go, folks, sort of feel?
I think with James Gunn involved, you'll get the epic, full-throated appeal. If they're smart, they'll have post-credit scenes for all their big budget movies. But if not, then the HBO Max series should fill in the blanks for any credits for any post-credit scenes that aren't there. But again, this is a massive undertaking. The four movies coming out this year for our fans that are paying attention: Shazam: Fury of the Gods will be out March 17th. Uh, Continuing with The Flash on June 16th. Short turnaround, The Blue Beetle on August 18th. And finally, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will come out the day after Christmas, December 26th of 2023.
So my take on this is that I am a big fan of James Gunn. I think he has a pedigree that you can't argue with, and he has a success rate you can't argue with. I was all too thrilled to be living in that Snyderverse, and I'd love to see a rebirth at some point or a follow through with some of his projects and some of his deal. If we're talking about, what'd you call it, elsewhere, or what is the parallel?
Elsewhere.
Elseworld.
Elsewhere.
Elseworld.
Elseworld.
If something like that can arise, if there's a deal that can be struck with Netflix, there's all these things that you're seeing online and rumors. And I mean, Zach
Maybe we'll get the Batman vampire.
yeah, but all of that. I mean, listen, the more the merrier. I'm always intrigued by different ways to approach these things. I know Zack Snyder himself is always, he loves this realm as well. And the films that preceded Zack Snyder, going back to to Keaton Batman and Christopher Reeve's
No.
Superman. All of this is a wonderful thing, and that's what I think the attraction of all of this stuff is that these characters. It's like a piece being interpreted by different musicians. The hope is, amongst anybody who loves the genre, is that you'll end up with something that gives you that distraction and that joy and that excitement. And I think it's hard not to look at this list of projects and say, wow, this is going to be something pretty amazing. Let me pop the Instas up here for you guys. How did I do as far as manipulating all the cool little effects and scene changes? Was I good this time, or did I suck so bad you can't stand it?
Awesome.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you, Steph. I'm going to go with that. And you guys can hold your comments to yourself. All right. And as always with this, as we always ask you, if you do get a chance, like the video and subscribe. This is longer than normal, but it is such a huge announcement from James Gunn that we thought we had to devote the time to it. Otherwise, you guys are awesome for spending the time with us. Get in touch with the gurus. Tell them what you'd like us to hit up. We're going to be doing more of these videos and try to keep getting the game better. And we are heading towards our first live stream video presentation. We're going to let you interact with the gurus. And Lord help me, I'm sure I'll screw it up. But until then, guys, have a good one. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.